In the shadowed corridors of Roman power, where ambition and intrigue intertwined like serpents, the story of Pontius Pilate began. Born into a family of modest standing in the Roman province of Samnium, Pilate was raised in a world where the might of Rome was both a promise and a threat. His father, a minor official in the Roman bureaucracy, instilled in him a deep respect for order and discipline, while his mother, a woman of sharp wit and sharper tongue, taught him the art of survival in a world where loyalty was often a commodity. From a young age, Pilate exhibited a keen intellect and a natural aptitude for leadership. He was sent to Rome to further his education, where he studied law, rhetoric, and the art of governance. It was here, amidst the grandeur of the eternal city, that Pilate first glimpsed the true nature of power. He saw how men of influence wielded their authority with a calculated mix of fear and favor, and he resolved to one day stand among them. Pilate's rise through the ranks of the Roman bureaucracy was steady but unremarkable. He served as a junior magistrate in several provinces, earning a reputation for his firm hand and unwavering loyalty to Rome. It was during this time that he caught the attention of Sejanus, the powerful prefect of the Praetorian Guard and right-hand man to Emperor Tiberius. Sejanus, always on the lookout for capable men who could further his own ambitions, saw in Pilate a kindred spirit, a man who understood the delicate balance of power and was willing to do whatever it took to maintain it. Under Sejanus's patronage, Pilate's career flourished. He was appointed as the procurator of Judea, a volatile and strategically important province on the eastern frontier of the Roman Empire. The position was both a reward and a test. Judea was a land of deep religious fervor and simmering resentment against Roman rule. It was a place where a single misstep could lead to rebellion, and where the line between governor and tyrant was perilously thin. Pilate arrived in Judea with a clear mandate: to maintain order and ensure the steady flow of taxes to Rome. He was determined to prove himself worthy of the trust placed in him by Sejanus and, by extension, the emperor. From the outset, Pilate adopted a policy of firm control, but he was not without a sense of pragmatism. He understood that brute force alone could not quell the passions of the Jewish people, and he sought to navigate the complex web of local politics with a careful hand. One of his first acts as procurator was to assert Roman authority in a way that would not provoke outright rebellion. He ordered the construction of an aqueduct to bring water to Jerusalem, a project that was both practical and symbolic. However, when he used funds from the temple treasury to finance the project, he sparked outrage among the Jewish leaders. Pilate, ever the pragmatist, managed to defuse the situation by making concessions and demonstrating a willingness to listen to their grievances. It was a delicate dance, but one that Pilate performed with skill. Despite his efforts, Pilate's tenure in Judea was marked by tension and conflict. The Jewish people, fiercely protective of their religious traditions, viewed him with suspicion and resentment. Pilate, for his part, struggled to reconcile his duty to Rome with the realities of governing a people who saw him as an oppressor. It was a balancing act that required all of his cunning and resolve. After the crucifixion of Jesus, Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea, found himself in a state of unease that grew with each passing day. Though he had reluctantly acquiesced to the demands of the Jewish leaders and the clamoring crowd to execute Jesus, the events surrounding the death of the Nazarene left him deeply troubled. The strange darkness that had fallen over the land at midday, the earthquake that rattled the foundations of Jerusalem, and the reports of the temple veil tearing in two from top to bottom had shaken him to his core. These were not ordinary occurrences, and Pilate, a man accustomed to the brutal pragmatism of Roman rule, could not easily dismiss them as mere coincidences. His wife, Claudia Procula, who had warned him in a dream to have nothing to do with that righteous man, continued to remind him of her foreboding. She had been deeply disturbed by the dream, and her insistence that Jesus was innocent haunted Pilate. Pilate tried to wash his hands of the matter, both literally and figuratively, but the weight of his decision lingered. He ordered Jesus' body to be taken down from the cross and given to Joseph of Arimathea for burial, hoping this small act of concession might ease his conscience. Yet, the rumors of Jesus' resurrection 3 days later only deepened his anxiety. The Jewish leaders came to him again, demanding that he secure the tomb to prevent the disciples from stealing the body. Pilate, weary and irritated, granted their request but privately wondered if he had made a grave mistake. In the days following the crucifixion, Pontius Pilate's unease grew into a consuming dread. The strange and inexplicable events that had accompanied Jesus' death, the unnatural darkness, the earthquake, the tearing of the temple veil, were not easily forgotten. But it was the reports that began to trickle in from various sources that truly unsettled him. These were not the usual complaints or petitions he received as prefect of Judea. They were accounts that defied reason and challenged his understanding of the world. One evening, as Pilate sat in his chambers reviewing administrative scrolls, a centurion named Longinus, who had overseen the execution at Golgotha, requested an audience. The man was a seasoned soldier, hardened by years of service to Rome, but when he entered the room, Pilate was struck by his pallor and the tremor in his hands. Longinus stood at attention, but his usual composure was gone. His voice was low, almost reverent, as he recounted what he had witnessed. "Prefect," Longinus began, "I have seen many men die, but never like this one." He did not cry out in pain or curse his executioners. Even as he hung on the cross, he spoke words of forgiveness. "And when he died, the sky darkened, the earth shook, and I felt something I cannot explain. Surely, this man was the Son of God." Pilate stiffened at the words. He waved his hand dismissively, ordering the centurion to leave, but the man's testimony lingered in the air like a ghost. "Son of God," Pilate muttered to himself after Longinus had gone. The phrase echoed in his mind, mingling with the memory of his wife's warning and the strange events of that fateful day. He tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the centurion had been overcome by the heat or the stress of the execution, but deep down, he could not shake the feeling that something extraordinary had occurred. A few days later, another report reached Pilate, this time from the Jewish leaders. They came to him in a state of agitation, their faces pale and their voices urgent. "The tomb is empty," they said. "The body of the Nazarene is gone." Pilate's brow furrowed. He had ordered the tomb sealed and posted guards to prevent Jesus' followers from stealing the body. How could it be empty? Summoning the guards, Pilate demanded an explanation. The soldiers, clearly terrified, recounted a story that seemed too fantastical to be true. In the early hours of the morning, one of them said, "There was a great light, and an angel descended from heaven. He rolled away the stone as if it were weightless, and we fell to the ground, paralyzed with fear. When we recovered, the tomb was open, and the body was gone." Pilate's skepticism warred with a growing sense of dread. He had seen enough of the world to know that not everything could be explained by reason, but this was beyond comprehension. He sent the guards away with a stern warning to keep silent, but the damage was done. The rumors spread like wildfire. Jesus' followers were boldly proclaiming that he had risen from the dead, just as he had foretold. They spoke of seeing him alive, of touching his wounds, of hearing his voice. Pilate's initial disbelief began to crumble under the weight of these accounts. One night, as he lay in bed, Pilate found himself unable to sleep. The words of the centurion, the testimony of the guards, and the fervent declarations of Jesus' followers swirled in his mind. He thought of the trial, of the way Jesus had looked at him, not with fear or anger, but with a quiet, unshakable authority. Pilate had tried to wash his hands of the matter, to absolve himself of responsibility, but now he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. What if Jesus had been innocent? What if he had been more than a man? Claudia, sensing his turmoil, tried to comfort him. "You must seek the truth," she urged. "If this man was who they say he was, then you must make amends." But Pilate, trapped between his Roman duty and his growing fear, could not bring himself to act. He was a man of power, accustomed to controlling his world, but now he felt as though he was standing on shifting sand. Claudia, too, was deeply affected. She withdrew from public life, spending hours in prayer and reflection. She urged Pilate to seek forgiveness, to make amends for what he had done. But Pilate, ever the pragmatist, could not bring himself to act on her pleas. He was a Roman official, a servant of the empire, and he could not afford to show weakness. Yet, the cracks in his facade were beginning to show. His temper grew shorter, his decisions more erratic. The soldiers under his command whispered among themselves, noting the change in their prefect. As the days turned into weeks, the reports of Jesus' resurrection only multiplied. His followers, once cowed and scattered, now moved with a boldness that astonished even Pilate. They preached in the streets, healed the sick, and defied the authorities. The Jewish leaders, desperate to contain the situation, came to Pilate again and again, demanding that he take action. But Pilate, haunted by guilt and fear, found himself paralyzed. He could not bring himself to persecute the followers of a man who might truly have been divine. The weight of his indecision began to take its toll. Pilate's health declined, and his once sharp mind grew clouded. He began to see visions, a figure in white, a crown of thorns, a pair of hands pierced by nails. He would wake in the night, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. Claudia, ever faithful, stayed by his side, but even she could not ease his torment. As the weeks turned into months, the situation in Judea grew increasingly volatile. The followers of Jesus, emboldened by their belief in his resurrection, began to spread their message throughout the region. Pilate, desperate to maintain order, cracked down harshly on any perceived threats to Roman authority. But his efforts only seemed to fuel the unrest. The Jewish leaders, once his allies, now viewed him with suspicion, blaming him for the growing influence of the Nazarenes. Pilate's superiors in Rome began to take notice. Reports of his mishandling of the situation in Judea reached the ears of Emperor Tiberius. When a Samaritan uprising led to a bloody confrontation, Pilate's fate was sealed. Lucius Vitellius, the Roman governor of Syria, ordered Pilate to return to Rome and answer for his actions. By the time Pilate arrived, Tiberius had died, and the new emperor, Caligula, was less inclined to show leniency. In the end, Pilate's career was ruined. Some say he was exiled to Gaul, where he lived out his days in obscurity, tormented by guilt and regret. Others claim he took his own life, unable to bear the weight of his actions. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, it is even said that Pilate eventually converted to Christianity and was martyred for his faith, though this is widely regarded as apocryphal. Historically, little is known for certain about Pilate's fate after his recall to Rome. What remains clear is that his encounter with Jesus left an indelible mark on his life, transforming him from a relatively obscure Roman official into a figure of enduring infamy and fascination. Whether he died in regret, exile, or obscurity, Pontius Pilate's name would forever be tied to the crucifixion of Jesus, a moment that changed the course of history. The story of Pontius Pilate after the death of Jesus is not detailed in the canonical Gospels of the Bible, but various traditions, legends, apocryphal texts, and historical accounts have attempted to fill in the gaps as the exact details of Pilate's life after Jesus' death remain shrouded in